A young orphan, devastated by the loss of his first love and best friend, is about to do something unthinkable. Samuel, drowning in debt, decides to assume the identity of the long-lost brother of a blind and lonely heiress, Grazi. The plan? Deceive Grazi to get the money he desperately needs. But as Samuel gets to know Grazi, he starts to genuinely fall in love with her. Grazi, living in a world of darkness and distrust, sees in Samuel a chance to reconnect with her family. Believing he is her lost brother, she begins to trust him, ignoring the occasional shadows of doubt. As they grow closer, Samuel struggles with the guilt and growing love he feels for her. But what happens next is something no one expected, so stay until the end. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and click the bell to not miss the next videos. Samuel grew up in an orphanage, a place filled with transient faces and fleeting connections. Among the many children he met, there was one person who stood out, his first love. Her name was Emily, a girl with a smile that could light up the darkest of days. They shared dreams, whispered secrets under the moonlight, and promised to find each other no matter what. But life had different plans. One cold winter night, a tragic accident took Emily away, leaving Samuel's heart shattered into pieces. The orphanage felt colder, lonelier, and every corner reminded him of her absence. To make matters worse, he also lost his best friend, another boy named Samuel, who had been like a brother to him. This Samuel was the son of a powerful business tycoon, but after his parents' bitter divorce, he was whisked away by his mother, never to be seen again. The double loss left a void in Samuel's heart, a wound that never fully healed. The pain of losing his first love and his best friend became a part of him, shaping the man he would become. He learned to guard his emotions, to build walls around his heart to protect himself from further pain. But deep down, the memories of Emily and his friends still haunted him, pushing him to make choices he wouldn't have otherwise considered. Years passed, and Samuel found himself entangled in a web of debts due to his growing addiction to gambling. Desperate and running out of options, he remembered his old friend Samuel and the influential family he belonged to. Driven by desperation, Samuel devised a plan to impersonate his old friend and secure the money he needed. Little did he know that this plan would lead him to Grazi, a woman who would challenge everything he thought he knew about love and trust. Grazi lived a life of solitude and silence. As the heiress to a vast business empire, her world was filled with wealth and power, yet devoid of genuine human connection. Blinded by an accident in her youth, she learned to navigate her life through the sounds, smells, and touches that surrounded her. Her blindness, however, was not her only burden. The weight of loneliness pressed heavily on her heart, compounded by the betrayal and deception she felt from those who only saw her as a means to an end. Her brother, Samuel, had been her anchor, but after their parents' divorce, he vanished from her life, leaving a chasm of emptiness. In his absence, Grazi grew increasingly distrustful, unable to rely on anyone. The luxurious mansion she called home became her gilded cage, where she spent her days surrounded by opulence but starved of affection. Grazi's daily routine was meticulously managed by her assistants, who ensured that everything ran smoothly. Yet, despite their constant presence, she felt profoundly alone. She yearned for a connection, for someone who saw beyond her wealth and status, someone who understood her struggles and fears. Then came the day Samuel re-entered her life, or so she thought. The news of her brother's return brought a flicker of hope to her heart. Samuel, the name alone stirred emotions she had long buried. When she met him, he seemed different, yet familiar. His voice, his touch, they brought back memories of a happier time, before everything had fallen apart. Unbeknownst to Grazi, the man standing before her was not her brother but an imposter. Samuel, the orphan who had lost everything, saw an opportunity in her vulnerability. He was desperate, burdened by his own dark past and mounting debts. His plan was simple: pose as her long-lost brother, earn her trust, and secure the money he desperately needed. But as days turned into weeks, Samuel found himself captivated by Grazi's strength and resilience. Despite her blindness and the isolation it brought, she was incredibly perceptive and wise. Her genuine kindness and the sadness in her unseeing eyes began to pierce the walls Samuel had built around his heart. Grazi, in turn, started to feel a connection she hadn't experienced in years. The man she believed to be her brother seemed to understand her in ways no one else did. He listened, he cared, and for the first time in a long while, she felt seen, truly seen. As their bond deepened, Grazi's guarded heart began to open, unaware of the deception that lay at its core. Little did they both know, the journey they embarked on together would lead them to confront not just their pasts, but the very essence of their beings. In the process, they would discover that love, in its truest form, could transcend even the deepest of betrayals. Desperation can drive a man to unthinkable lengths, and for Samuel, it was no different. With mounting debts threatening to consume him, Samuel found himself backed into a corner, his options dwindling by the day. He had lost almost everything in a series of ill-fated bets and reckless decisions, and the shadow of his past failures loomed large. In a moment of sheer desperation, a plan began to take shape in Samuel's mind. It was risky, deceitful, and morally questionable, but it offered a glimmer of hope in his otherwise bleak existence. He would assume the identity of his long-lost friend, Samuel, the wealthy heir who had disappeared from his life years ago. The real Samuel's family, unaware of their son's fate and blinded by the passage of time, could be his ticket out of this mess. Samuel's plan hinged on convincing Grazi, the blind and vulnerable sister of his deceased friend. She had been isolated from the world and trusted few, making her both a challenging and ideal target for his scheme. If he could gain her trust, he could access the vast family fortune that lay just out of his reach. The first step was gathering information. Samuel immersed himself in the details of his friend's past, memorizing every nuance of their childhood together. He studied old photographs, letters, and any remnants of their shared history. He rehearsed stories, perfecting his impersonation until he could seamlessly weave himself into Grazi's memories. When the time came to meet her, Samuel's heart raced with anticipation and fear. He knew that one slip-up could unravel his entire plan, yet the potential reward was too great to ignore. The moment he stepped into Grazi's life, he played the part of the loving, long-lost brother, rekindling old stories and sharing anecdotes that only someone close to her would know. Grazi, desperate for a connection and blinded by her own loneliness, welcomed him with cautious optimism. She tested him with questions, probing the authenticity of his claims. Samuel, ever the convincing actor, navigated her inquiries with a blend of charm and careful deceit. He spoke of their childhood games, the secret hiding spots they once shared, and the warmth of their familial bond. As the days turned into weeks, Samuel's deception grew more elaborate. He managed to forge documents and gather enough plausible evidence to solidify his new identity. Each interaction with Grazi drew him deeper into his lie, and he found himself torn between his growing affection for her and the guilt of his deceit. Yet, the more time he spent with Grazi, the more he realized that his plan was becoming increasingly untenable. Her genuine kindness and the bond they were forming made him question his motives. Despite his original intentions, Samuel found himself caring deeply for her. He was no longer just an imposter seeking financial gain. He was a man caught in the throes of a complex and unexpected emotional entanglement. As Samuel's feelings for Grazi deepened, so did the stakes of his deception. He was now trapped in a web of his own making, torn between the need to secure his future and the burgeoning love he felt for Grazi. The plan that once seemed like his salvation was quickly becoming his greatest burden, leading him to an inevitable crossroads where he would have to choose between truth and love. As Samuel settled into his new role as Grazi's long-lost brother, the days became a delicate dance of reconnection and deception. Grazi, initially hesitant, began to open up to Samuel, finding solace in the familiarity he seemed to bring. Her cautious optimism was a fragile thing, easily shattered but slowly strengthening with each shared moment. Samuel, playing his part with precision, found himself navigating a complex web of emotions. He had anticipated Grazi's questions and had prepared answers to each one. They reminisced about childhood games, spoke of their supposed shared memories, and laughed at old family jokes. Samuel's heart ached each time he deceived her, yet he pressed on, driven by the need to secure the money that could save him. Despite his growing guilt, Samuel couldn't help but be drawn to Grazi's resilience and vulnerability. She was strong yet deeply wounded, navigating her world without sight but with incredible perceptiveness. As they spent more time together, he began to see beyond his own desperation. Her loneliness mirrored his own, creating a connection that was both genuine and heart-wrenchingly deceptive. Grazi, on the other hand, started to trust Samuel more each day. She confided in him about the struggles she faced after her accident, the isolation that came with her blindness, and the mistrust she harbored for those around her. Samuel listened, offering comfort and understanding. He was a pillar of support, something she hadn't felt in years. The bond between them grew, a mixture of truth and lies that Samuel found increasingly difficult to separate. One evening, while sitting in the garden, Grazi turned to Samuel with tears in her eyes. "You know, for a long time, I felt like I was completely alone in this world. But now that you're here, I feel like I have a family again." Samuel's chest tightened with guilt. He reached out and took her hand, his own trembling slightly. "You'll never be alone again, Grazi. I promise." As their connection deepened, so did the complexity of Samuel's deception. He found himself entangled in a mix of genuine affection and the ever-present reminder of his initial motives. Each day, the lines blurred further, and Samuel struggled with the reality of his actions. He was falling for Grazi, but the foundation of their relationship was built on a lie. The turning point came when Grazi suggested they visit their family estate. Samuel's heart raced at the thought. The risk of exposure was immense. Yet, he agreed, knowing that refusing could arouse suspicion. As they walked through the grand halls of the estate, Grazi pointed out old family portraits, asking Samuel to recount stories and memories. Every interaction was a test, and Samuel navigated it with a mix of anxiety and improvisation. He marveled at how much he had come to care for Grazi, and the idea of hurting her became unbearable. Yet, the fear of losing everything if the truth came out loomed over him constantly. As the visit to the estate concluded, Samuel and Grazi sat by the fireplace. The warmth of the fire contrasted sharply with the cold reality of his deceit. Grazi leaned her head on Samuel's shoulder, whispering, "I'm so glad you're back, Samuel. I've missed you more than words can say." In that moment, Samuel felt a profound sense of love and guilt wash over him. The deception had gone too far, and he knew that the longer it continued, the harder the fall would be for both of them. He was trapped between the man he was and the man he was pretending to be, and the path ahead seemed fraught with heartache and impossible choices. The reconnection with Grazi, built on a foundation of lies, was leading Samuel to a precipice. He knew that soon he would have to make a decision. Continue the deception and risk destroying the woman he had come to love, or come clean and face the consequences of his actions. The stakes had never been higher, and Samuel's heart hung in the balance, teetering between love and betrayal. The bond between Samuel and Grazi grew stronger with each passing day, evolving into something neither of them had anticipated. What started as a ruse to extract money from a vulnerable heiress had transformed into a genuine connection, filled with moments of shared laughter, deep conversations, and silent understandings. Samuel found himself entangled in the very emotions he had tried to manipulate, and his feelings for Grazi became undeniably real. One afternoon, as they walked through the garden, Grazi stopped and turned to Samuel, her expression serious. "Samuel, I need to know something. Why did you come back? After all these years, why now?" Samuel's heart pounded. He had rehearsed this conversation countless times, but now, faced with Grazi's earnest gaze, the lies felt heavier than ever. I realized what I had left behind. Family is everything, and I wanted to make things right." Grazi nodded slowly, accepting his answer but still sensing something was amiss. The truth was buried under layers of deception, and Samuel could feel the weight of it growing each day. As their relationship deepened, so did the complexity of Samuel's emotions. He was falling deeply in love with Grazi, yet the foundation of their relationship was built on a lie. The internal conflict was tearing him apart. Every kind word, every gentle touch, reminded him of the deceit he was perpetuating. The guilt gnawed at him, especially during the quiet moments they shared. One evening, after a particularly heartfelt conversation, Grazi confessed, "I've never felt this close to anyone before. You make me feel safe, Samuel. Loved." Her voice wavered, and Samuel could see the vulnerability in her eyes. "I love you too, Grazi," Samuel replied, the words both a balm and a dagger to his conscience. He meant them with all his heart, but they were tainted by the dishonesty that shadowed their relationship. The tension between love and deceit reached its peak one stormy night. Grazi had planned a special dinner to celebrate their newfound closeness. Candles lit the room, casting a warm glow over the table. As they dined, Grazi reached across and held Samuel's hand. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about us. I want you to know that I trust you completely." Samuel's stomach churned. He had to tell her the truth, but fear held his tongue. Could he risk losing her by revealing his true motives? The conflict within him was a tempest, raging against his desire to be honest. Just as he opened his mouth to speak, a loud knock interrupted them. The moment shattered, and Grazi looked toward the door, her expression puzzled. Samuel felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He stood up and walked to the door, opening it to reveal a stern-looking man holding an envelope. "Delivery for Samuel," the man said, handing it over before leaving. Samuel's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from one of his debtors, a stark reminder of the reality he had tried to escape. The words blurred as he read, demanding payment and threatening dire consequences. Grazi, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, asked, "What is it, Samuel?" He looked at her, torn between his love for her and the pressing weight of his deceit. "It's nothing," he lied, tucking the letter into his pocket. The conflict between love and deceit had reached a boiling point. Samuel knew that he couldn't keep this charade up forever. He was in too deep, his feelings for Grazi too strong to ignore. The love he felt was genuine, but so was the danger that loomed over them both. As the storm raged outside, Samuel realized that he was at a crossroads. The path he chose next would define not only his future but Grazi's as well. Love and conflict intertwined, and the resolution of their story hung in the balance, waiting for the inevitable moment when truth and lies would collide. The day of reckoning had arrived. Samuel knew that his web of lies was unsustainable, and the weight of his deceit was crushing him. He stood in the grand living room of Grazi's estate, his heart pounding, as Grazi sat across from him, her unseeing eyes gazing in his direction, trusting and vulnerable. "Samuel," Grazi began, her voice trembling slightly, "there's something I need to tell you. I've been thinking a lot about our time together, and I love you. You've brought light into my life that I thought I'd never feel again." Samuel felt a lump in his throat. Her confession, filled with genuine emotion, was a knife to his heart. He had to tell her the truth. He owed her that much, despite the pain it would cause. "Grazi," he started, his voice shaky, "there's something I need to tell you too. Something very important." She tilted her head, sensing the gravity in his tone. "What is it, Samuel?" "I'm not who you think I am," he confessed, his voice breaking. "I'm not your brother. I'm just a man who took advantage of your kindness. I pretended to be Samuel to get close to you, to get the money I needed, but in the process, I fell in love with you." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Grazi's face went pale, her expression shifting from confusion to hurt. "You lied to me," she whispered, the betrayal clear in her voice. "Yes," Samuel admitted, tears streaming down his face. "I lied, but my feelings for you are real. Every moment we spent together, everything we shared, that was real. I never meant to hurt you." Grazi stood up, her hands trembling. "How could you do this to me? After everything, how could you deceive me like this?" Samuel reached out, but she stepped back, out of his reach. "Grazi, please," he pleaded. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I love you. I truly do. and I'll do anything to make it right." She shook her head, tears falling from her eyes. "I trusted you. I let you into my life, into my heart, and you shattered it." The room felt colder, the distance between them growing with every passing second. Samuel's heart ached, knowing that his actions had caused this pain. "Grazi," he said softly, "I'm willing to leave if that's what you want. But I want you to know that I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for what I've done, trying to be a better man." Grazi stood in silence, her mind racing. She had been betrayed by someone she trusted deeply, yet the love she felt for him was undeniable. Could she find it in her heart to forgive him? Could they rebuild what had been broken? Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but filled with sorrow. "Samuel, I need time. Time to process this. Time to heal. I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you, but I can't deny my feelings either. For now, I need you to leave." Samuel nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. He took one last look at the woman he loved, his heart heavy with regret and hope. "I'll wait for you, Grazi, no matter how long it takes." As he walked out of the room, the future remained uncertain. The truth had been revealed, and the final decision was in Grazi's hands. The path to redemption and love would be long and fraught with challenges, but Samuel was determined to prove his worth and win back her trust. Only time would tell if their love could survive the ultimate test.